I kind of held back in that first episode, which I think you knew I was holding back. I've decided, might as well just speak my mind and just quit holding back. I can't lie where my research has gone. Anybody that's investigating now or used to investigate a lot, if you're really getting into this field hardcore, having encounters is kind of like second nature. Like, it just happens. You're going into places so often that they're gonna happen. Weird stuff happens all the time when you're going out. Obviously, not every time I go into the field, something happens. The deeper you go into this field, you got to really start wondering, really, what are you dealing with? I wouldn't say that I think I have the answers, but I'm either getting closer to the answers or I'm going way down the wrong rabbit hole.
Different for me. Not many guests asked to come back on, and
yeah, I kind of held back in that first episode.
Yeah,
I mean, the first time we talked, which I think you knew I was holding back. I've decided, might as well just speak my mind and just quit holding back. I listened, the episode 178, 169 kind of caught my attention because I understand where those guys are coming from, and I've been working on a lot of the same theories they were talking about. And I was like, you know what? If Matt's going to let them talk about that subject matter, I don't think he's going to mind if I just quit holding back and just let loose.
Growing up, the short version of a very long story, the way I got into Bigfoot was at a very early age. I was experiencing paranormal stuff in my house, and my house has a history of paranormal stuff, and it was kind of like this journey through the paranormal stuff and trying to learn about it growing up that I ended up finding out about Bigfoot. As it was just like a related interest, that I read about in books and stuff. And later on in life, I ended up basically looking up Bigfoot on the internet and finding out that people go out and look for it and everything. And I thought, oh, that's kind of cool, whatever. I was into the outdoors and stuff. And I ended up meeting up with people and started going out researching just out the gate. And that's kind of how I got into Bigfoot. But with that being said, that was in my early 20s. And by the time I had reached that point, I had experienced all kinds of crazy stuff in my life, all kinds of paranormal stuff, things that can't be explained. And I'm pretty grounded in my beliefs with like science and everything to a certain extent. But like, I'm fully aware that there's things out there that like we just don't have the answers for, and things happen. And I noticed that there seemed to be some sort of connection with a lot of people. Just their paths were a little bit different, or they had like a lot of stuff happening to them that wasn't just all Bigfoot. There was other stuff going on too. And so I've experienced enough in my life, that I don't have an explanation for, or can't be fit into a little box, or to know that there's a lot more to it than just what a lot of people think. So with that being said, yeah, I let people come on here and tell whatever story or theories or whatever, because like, I know there's more to it.
Yeah, definitely. I get it. I can't lie where my research has gone. I can't lie where, just like you, I've experienced a lot of crap, and I can't lie and say it didn't happen. So I just, I'm tired of holding back. I decided to just going to speak my mind a little more freely this time. I've got other encounters that I can talk on. I have a feeling that any investigator, whether it's you or, which I know you don't investigate anymore, but anybody that's investigating now or used to investigate a lot, it seems to me that if you're really getting into this field hardcore, it becomes like having encounters is kind of like second nature. Like it just happens. I mean, you're going out, you're going into places so often that they're going to happen. Weird stuff happens all the time when you're going out there. Not every time. Obviously, not every time I go into the field, something happens, but I've got more than one encounter, like, because I've just been doing this since, I guess, 2013 now. But I definitely just want to speak more freely.
Yeah. Let me put it this way. My show is not meant to cater to any one belief system. You know, you could say some things that for whatever reason open the doors for someone else or helps them deal with something that they're going through where they might think they're crazy or that, you know, nobody would believe them or whatever. So I encourage you to go whatever direction you want. The platform is yours, man. I mean, like I said, I'm not used to this situation. You're the first person I've done this with, to be honest. So, like, yeah, the floor is yours. Say what you want.
First off, I'll just get this cleared out. I introduced myself as Mike from Interdimensional Wisdom last time. My name is actually Joe. And the reason I'm doing that is I don't really think there's any reason not to use my real name. Also, I've had a few individuals ask me, why don't you just use your real name instead of using your alias? And I've decided, you know what, I'm going to quit hiding behind it's actually a middle name. So I'm just using my real name from this point forward. So anyways, name's Joe for one. And I'm glad to be back talking to you.
Yeah. For the first several years that I was involved in Bigfoot, my name was Kane Marco. Yeah. I get the alias thing. There's nothing wrong with that, but you know, I always give the guest the option if they want to use an alias or stay as anonymous as they want. And you reached out to me recently and you said, you know what, I want to come back on and I want to speak more freely and I want to talk about some things that, you know, I didn't get to last time. And so that's why we're here.
Yeah. You know, I spoke on my other encounters and, you know, I've had other encounters other than the ones that I spoke to you about, and I can relay those, you know, for you and others to listen, you know, to hear. I'll just use an example. I went to Iowa, probably, let's say at least 4 or 5 years ago. I don't remember the exact date, but point is I started doing research in Iowa. And at that point in my research, I just looked for what I would consider plausible terrain to potentially find cryptids, which at that point in my research, I was using a lot of the same benchmarks that you would use if you were going to go look for transient mountain lions, or you're going to go look for any other type of animal in an area. You know, you narrow it down to certain parameters that you're looking for, which is what I did for that area. I didn't know the area other than I had 2 individuals that I was working with at the time in my career field, and they, you know, through talking to me, had told me that they were interested in having an experience, that they wanted to see Sasquatch, or, well, one of them was interested in Dogman, but point being is they'd never gone out in the field, but they were open to it. So I was like, you know, well, I can't promise anything, but I'll take you guys with me and we'll see where it goes. And so I narrowed it down to to a wildlife management area in eastern Iowa. And I told him that we would take off probably about an hour or two before sunset. I told him that I'd prefer to operate right in that transition zone between dawn to dusk or dusk to dawn, and then through the overnight. That's what I've found to be the most active time frame for having any type of encounters or experiences. So anyways, we drove out to an area, and I used a call that I was using at the time, and it's been productive before that to get return calls and or basically get them to come into me. And so we went out to an area around a rural area in a parking lot. It's not quite dark yet, and I used that call. We didn't hear a call back, but probably about 5-10 minutes after I made the call, first thing that I noticed is my instinct started going off. So I don't know about you, but with me, anytime I'm doing field research, if they're coming in, I know they're coming in through my instincts usually first. My instincts start going off, and I could just tell something was coming. Something was in the area. The whole atmosphere changed. And shortly thereafter, I started hearing, the best way I can describe it is like a linebacker running through the woods. And you heard branches snapping and twigs being stepped on and leaves being stepped on. And it just got louder and louder. And I started bracing myself. We were standing outside our vehicle, and I told the guys I was with, I was like, look, I don't know where this is going to go, but if we hear footsteps on the rocks and we don't see anything, but we hear footsteps, we need to go, because that means that they're running still. So we held until I heard the first foot fall in the rocks, and it kept on coming. At that point, all I did was turn around, jump in my vehicle. They jumped in the vehicle, and I didn't actually see anything at that point. But one of the guys I was with said, I don't know what that was, but that was the biggest wolf I'd ever seen. So we jumped in the car and we took off. I never saw it that time, but that night led into a weird night in that we stopped at a field down the road from that area, and something came to the edge of the field that I was able to visually observe, and it was what people would call a dog man, more commonly referred to as a dog man, on the edge of that cornfield. That night was a bad night in that whatever that was followed us, and we were staying at a hotel that night. The reason I say it was a bad night is because I got to visually observe it. It came up to the edge of the corn. There was a field next to that hotel, and it came up to the edge of that field and the ditch, and it showed itself right on the edge of the ditch. But really what made it a bad night is that just the feeling I had that night was like an overwhelming sense of, like, best way I can describe it as dread. And I felt like haunted or hunted, and I knew they were outside. And I'm pretty up until this point, I'm pretty stable in my how I view the world psychologically. So I didn't like that event. Actually made me quit researching for quite a while, because it just pushed me over the edge. I didn't like that feeling of feeling haunted or hunted, basically.
The guy that saw it originally, whenever you were in the parking lot, was he the one that was interested in seeing Dogman?
Negative. That was actually the other guy that wanted to see the Dogman.
Huh.
That wanted to see the Dogman. The guy that said he saw it was interested in just going, period. But one of them was definitely interested in Dogman. Anyways, that really made me quit for a little while. I quit doing research for just a couple months. I did more academic research. But ironically, if you look at the names of the roads, one of the roads in that area where that hotel is at is called it basically refers back to like wolf, but it's spelled like with the German spelling.
Mm-hmm.
Which is just, it makes me wonder, why did they name that road that name? And we also had a Dogman encounter in that area. It just, I don't know why, but if you start studying maps, that's actually quite common. It's known among researchers that, if you look at the name of certain creeks or the name of certain bayous and the name of certain roads or hills, a lot of those areas have activity in them. And you wonder, why did they name it that?
I mean, that was actually something that we looked for quite often whenever we were scouting new areas.
I've had multiple encounters, and I could continue to tell you my encounters, but really what I would like to, talk on, other than, I could talk about doing field research, but I think field research is only going to get you so far until you dive deeper into the subject matter of, what really is Sasquatch or Dogman, and what, I know it's a very contentious topic, but you have to ask, why can certain researchers basically not, they can't have encounters at will, but they have gotten to the point where they have encounters pretty frequently, and they're having encounters where Sasquatch and or Dogmen are coming to their home. I know of researchers that now can speak in a language that they weren't able to speak. Like, there's, the deeper you go into this field, you got to really start wondering, really, what are you dealing with? Because you had a recent gentleman on episode 178 and episode 169, and it just made me really start thinking about a few things, and I just really wanted to speak more openly on them. And that's where my research had led anyways.
So have you reached a point where you think you have some of those answers?
It's not, I wouldn't say that I think I have the answers, but I'm definitely leaning heavily in the direction that I'm either getting closer to the answers or I'm going way down the wrong rabbit hole.
Okay. Well, I mean, what rabbit hole are you going down? What are you leaning towards at this point?
Well, so, regarding that gentleman's view and what he was saying, I went down the same path that he went into regarding them being spiritual, but humans, if you look at it from a quantum physics standpoint, or if you study the Bible, no matter what academic stance you're going to take, humans are energy at the base level. And, the latest advances in quantum physics and associated fields, that means, humans are basically electrical energy or electrical energy at the base level, as far as atoms are concerned. Why is Sasquatch and Dogman also not energy at that base level also? And how do I put this? So Dogman and Sasquatch and humans are all energy at the base level. And why can't you be spiritual yet physical at the same time if you're using quantum physics, plasma theory, and like the latest studies in like interdimensional theory? Why can't you be one and why can't you be both at the same time? Basically, why can't Sasquatch and Dogman exist in our dimension, yet be able to cross into whatever other dimension they're coming from or they go to when they're not in this one? The reason I go down that path is, you're probably, I'm not going to be the first person to say this to you, but many researchers talk about them being able to cloak, or, the famous story of which isn't really a famous story in that it's happened to multiple researchers. It's just one story has been talked about more publicly in that they talk about the snow tracks that disappear into the open field. How did those tracks just end? Where did that specimen go to? They didn't, there's no tree there. There was no hole in the ground. The tracks just stopped in the middle of a field. I know that when you start getting into this subject matter, I was not comfortable initially going down this rabbit hole. The only reason I was even willing to start really getting into it more heavily is when I started looking at it more from the standpoint of quantum physics and, plasma theory and interdimensional theory, and that there is actually science behind this. It's not just crazy talk.
Yeah, there is science behind it. There is study into different states of matter and things that can actually change their state of matter independently, where they do become different things. And so the next step in that would be what you're talking about, something that would be able to basically be two different states at the same time.
The other thing that makes me think about it is, how is it that we have witnesses or we have investigators that talk about they materialized on my roof? I didn't see them on camera cross my yard. I didn't visually observe them around my house, but they're on my roof as if they originated on their roof. Now, obviously, you have to dive into that incident and rule out them crossing in to that property from the woods and make sure that they didn't just climb up on the roof. But there's been multiple, I don't know about you, but I've spoken to multiple witnesses that have said that they just basically they didn't see them on their cameras. I've had at least two that had cameras around their house, and they didn't see the specimen on their cameras. And it was as if it just appeared on their roof and was walking around on their roof, which is why another incidents like that, or the tracks disappearing in the field, and other experiences that I've had in the field, is why I started going down this rabbit hole. Which, once you really start digging into it, if they are, let's say they have the ability to move between this and another dimension. If you study other academic texts, it leads you into questions regarding the fallen, basically our Sasquatch and Dogman origins from the fallen via potentially the Nephilim, via possibly genetic alterations, which then that gets into people arguing about is the alien subject matter and the demon subject matter, is that separate? But if aliens are possibly interdimensional, which, we're going way, way down the rabbit hole now. Could it be that the aliens are actually what is written in the Bible as the fallen, as in they're the same, basically, that there's no difference between the two? Is the spiritual world and via the interdimensional theory tied into alien academic theory? And the whole subject changes when you really start to think about the subject and look at the associated academic texts. And in the world's changing. That's the only reason I'm really even willing to speak on this openly. And that, we had a congressman recently on Joe Rogan, Anna Paulina Luna, talking about interdimensional theory. And there was another channel that talks, I don't know if he wants me to say, it's Modern Mysticism, his YouTube channel, and he talks about interdimensional theory and plasma theory, which, if you listen to those episodes and you actually study the science, how can you not know for sure that Sasquatch, Dogman, angels, demons, aliens are not all interconnected in some way?
Do you think they're connected, or do you think they are the same thing?
I don't know. I really don't know that. I don't know the answer to that one. I don't know if they're the same thing or they're interconnected in some way, and that they're separate entities that are all interrelated in some form,
Because let's just pull the Band-Aid off real quick. Earlier, whenever you were talking about the encounter you had in Iowa with those other guys, you talked about going out to an area looking for cryptids.
Yep.
You didn't say Bigfoot, and you didn't say Dogman. You said cryptids.
Nope. Yep.
Whenever you start looking for these areas, once you've figured out these are the areas to go to, and you start going to those areas, it's not just one thing that shows up there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So are all of these different things just attracted to the same, land? I mean, that's kind of weird to think. So,
yeah, I know exactly where you're going with it.
So what's going on here? Is this like, well, yeah, all fish live in water? I mean, are these things coming from the same place? Are they being drawn to the same thing? Are they somehow drawn from our own consciousness?
Which is possible depending on who you study. There's definitely academics that are moving towards the theory of, I can't even really speak on it without watching in the video again, but basically, you make your own reality.
Right. And there's a lot of people, you were talking about, modern alien theory, for a lack of a better term, how UFOs aren't necessarily, these spacecraft from the deep reaches of space, but maybe they're interdimensional. There's been observed, documented sightings of UFOs where they have seemed to be fluid in nature or made out of some sort of non-solid material where they're constantly changing shape and frequency and everything else. And there's definitely people out there who somehow either manifest or call in orbs, UFOs, aliens, whatever you want to call it, telepathically, psychically, through meditation. I don't really know what label to put on it. But it's not, it's no longer little green men in flying spaceships.
Yeah. I mean, so, since I'm talking more freely, I've gotten to the point personally that I can lay in bed, and I'm not saying that I can do this in the middle of a city, although because I've not tested it yet. But I can lay in bed on the edge of a town or the edge of a suburban area, and I don't know why. I can't explain it. And it doesn't happen all the time, but it's not uncommon for them to come to me. I'm not talking about aliens. I'm talking about, I don't think I've ever, well, that's a lie. I may or may not have seen whatever you want to call them, UFOs or unidentifying, what aerial phenomenon. I don't know, UAPs. I don't know what term they're using anymore.
Right.
I may or may not have seen that at some point, but I can say for sure that it's not uncommon for me at times to have Dogman, Sasquatch. I don't go outside to go ask which one is out there, but it's not uncommon for me to be laying in bed. And I know they're there because my instincts tell me they're there, for one. Two, who else is tapping on the window? Who else is tapping on the side of the house and not showing up on camera? Who else is tapping on that side of the house and not tripping the security measures that I've taken? Because of the field that I've gotten into, I do take certain security measures to rule out humans. Now, either I'm dealing with one of the smartest freaking humans that I've dealt with, that is trained in special forces, military, so, ex-military, or it's something it's Sasquatch or Dogman or something else tapping on the side of the house. And why am I able to essentially call them in at this point? And I don't know how I'm doing it. I don't know if I psychic or whatever you want to call it, but it's not uncommon for me at this point. And I don't know why I've gotten to that point, but it's also not unheard of. It's not like I'm the only researcher that is able to do that. I know several that happens to, that, they feel as if they're being visited regularly by cryptids. We'll just call them cryptids. And why are they coming? I don't know. Why are certain individuals able to call them in? I don't know.
Do you have any theories?
I mean, I do. I mean, going down that rabbit hole that I was already going down, it got me into thinking about, how do we not know that we as modern humans just lost knowledge as a broader population on how to navigate the true depths of our abilities? Because it seems the ancient the ancient populations of humans were more open and in a broader sense to discuss these topics and to go down this rabbit hole. It's as if times are changing, because it wasn't until the last 4 or 5 years that I really started hearing that many people talk about this. And it wasn't within the last year to 6 months that I've heard it enough that I'm willing to talk about it openly. I don't know if I know for sure, but I heard one gentleman talk about that we live potentially in a fractal holographic universe, which everything in a single place contains the whole of the universe, which you have to dive. I'm not going to expound on that theory, but who's to say that gentleman's not wrong? I mean, who's to say he's not right about that? I don't know why, but it just seems like Sasquatch and Dogman, if you want to go even further into it, angels, demons can manipulate energy to move around between this dimension where we're at and wherever they're going or coming from. If you dive into plasma theory while studying Sasquatch and ancient religious texts such as the Book of Enoch, you can start seeing how it's possibly interrelated. Which, if you you study that, and then you also bring integrate morality into it. You can start getting into like the concepts of light and darkness, good and evil. You can start speculating on, is Sasquatch and Dogman themselves, are they good? Are they evil? Are they divided between the both? Do they have the will to choose between, are they good? Are they bad? Are they of the light? Are they of the darkness? But if you speak to, indigenous beliefs, you can see why they call Sasquatch and Dogman of the shadow, or they're not of the shadow. It depends on what tribe you speak to. But, which going down that subject, why did the Seminole refer to them as the ones that make you forget? How can Sasquatch make you forget if they don't have powers to make you forget? I don't know if I've gotten answers, but I definitely feel as if going down this rabbit hole, I'm going in the right direction, only because I'm not saying that they're not physical, but I'm starting to question, what does physical mean? Just because your body's physical on this plane, why does that mean that it can't transition?
So here's a question, and this isn't necessarily directed at you. It's just something for everyone to think about. If you are of the belief that ghosts exist and that ghosts are the spirit of the former living, whether it be a person or an animal or whatever, at one point in time, that person was a physical being. After they passed away, they became a spiritual being. If you believe that that's possible, why can you not entertain the idea that there might be things out there that don't have to pass away to accomplish that?
Yeah, I definitely can understand that for sure. I don't know why it's hard for others to see that, but it is definitely not an easy subject matter for many.
I mean, you spoke on the idea that we forgot abilities that we once had.
Yeah.
If you think about things like ancient Egypt and the Great Pyramids and all that, and how we still to this day debate and try to figure out, like, how are those things made? And we just can't wrap our heads around the idea that, like, humans could do that back then. We find it difficult to do that sort of thing today with modern tools. So how did people back then do it without those modern tools? Would it have even been possible? The theories are all over the place whenever it comes to that subject. And oftentimes I have pondered, whenever it comes to Bigfoot and other cryptids and the paranormal and, aliens and all that sort of thing. Why are we so fascinated with it? Why are we so interested in trying to figure it out and hold on to it? I mean, take Bigfoot as an example. Bigfoot's everywhere. It's used in advertising, marketing. There's people with Bigfoot stickers on their cars everywhere. And we're not talking about Bigfoot researchers. These are just everyday people. They use it in television commercials, jack links and all that. Why? Well, they don't do that with other cryptids, so why Bigfoot? Is it possible, looking back at the stories of the Native Americans, how some tribes, the way that they talk about Bigfoot, for instance, that they're just the others, the other people, and that at one time humans had a peaceful existence with Bigfoot and coexisted and would communicate with one another. Maybe they kept their distance a little bit, but they were still fully aware of one another, and Bigfoot didn't hide from us, basically.
Yeah.
So is it possible that, like, the interest that we have in all this subject matter is because part of our psyche remembers those times and remembers those abilities, and we're trying to hold on to it, and we just can't quite put our finger on it?
Yeah, it's quite possible. Which, you know, going into that and related to what I was talking about earlier, you know, there's also the theory that, you know, I don't know exactly the details on it because I still am researching it myself, but that humans and, you know, Sasquatch are, they not only were we living side by side at one point, but you got to get into, well, what's the origins of humans and Sasquatch? And are Sasquatch the genetically modified, or is it humans that are possibly genetically modified? If you want to consider the Bible and the Book of Enoch and get into the fallen, which, you know, that opens up a whole different rabbit hole in itself. If you really want to study, you know, the apocryphal and figure out truly what are the, you know, the origins of humans and Sasquatch, and did we live together at one point? And you know, I don't know about you, but to think that it's to think about the potential that, you know, humans were the ones that were genetically modified, and it's not, and that's the reason our brains were able to advance as fast as they did, and that's why they can't explain how we made the jump from basically monkeys to humans as fast as we did. You know, that just opens up a whole different ballpark of questions. And I don't know the answer to that one. I don't know the answer to the origins of humans and where did Sasquatch come from. But I've definitely considered, did humans and Sasquatch once, you know, dwell together? And it's only over time that Sasquatch have withdrawn into the more rural areas. But then that also gets into, if Sasquatch do have if humans and Sasquatch did intermix amongst themselves in ancient times, and Sasquatch over time withdrew, which, you know, you talk to many indigenous about the subject, they do speak on, they're just the other people. If Sasquatch has the abilities that we're talking about, why can't humans have that ability? We just don't know it.
Well, if you're going down that rabbit hole, if we look at nature, if we look at the animal kingdom, okay, separate the humans from it. If you remove humans from the earth and you look at the animals that are left and you look at primates and you think, okay, well, as a designer, if I'm designing the next level up from there, what does that thing look like? And in my opinion, it looks like a Bigfoot. It does not look like a human. In my opinion, there is a huge gap between everything on the planet and then humans. Which to me seems really strange. It also seems strange that we have found, you know, skeletal remains and artifacts and everything from other humans and human type species that just no longer exist. I know that's possible, but I also know that that also sounds like failed experiments that have been discarded and moved on from.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, we're just talking, you know, like nobody needs to get their panties in a wad. We're just talking. We don't have the answers, but these are interesting things to think about. And then to take it a step further, sometimes in science, especially whenever you're talking about things like genetic modifications and all that, we're starting to learn as humans how to turn certain things on and off in the genetic coding before something's ever born. If something's more advanced than us that created us, who says they didn't do the same thing to us and just turned off those abilities? And maybe in some of society, some people still have a little bit of fragments left, still have a little bit of the abilities left. It's not turned off quite all the way. The handle on the faucet isn't turned all the way off.
Yeah.
And maybe it's possible that for some people, they have figured out how to start turning it back on.
Yeah, it's quite, obviously me and you have thought about a lot of the same things.
Book of Enoch was years ago.
Yeah.
Like Book of Enoch should be a required reading for all Bigfoot researchers. And, that should be in like the first grade.
Yeah. It also makes me think about, I don't know about you, but have you noticed, which I'm kind of hesitant to say this, but it is the truth, that any researchers that go too deep down this rabbit hole, some of them tend to meet questionable fates that speak too openly on this topic. But you might want to remove this part from our talk, but I'm just asking.
I mean, if you're asking, there was an investigation that I was a part of, and one of my best friends was also involved in this investigation. And we were talking recently. Out of the entire group of people that were part of this thing, several of them are no longer with us. And the majority of the others have suffered greatly health-wise and had, for lack of better words, near-death experiences, including myself.
I only asked that question because I'm not going to mention the certain researcher's name, but there was a researcher that was talking about this subject, not quite as in depth as we are right now, but they were definitely talking about how Sasquatch could be spiritual, and they were bringing the Book of Enoch and the Bible into it, and they were a pretty well-known researcher to at least other researchers, and they had a heart attack, which, many of the people listening are probably going to figure out who I'm talking about, but that, together with a few other occurrences, just made me wonder, well, are we going down the right path and we're not supposed to be really poking around this path that much? Which is why I was not using my real name until now. But I've just decided to pull the Band-Aid off and just send it and just talk openly. Because other people are talking openly about the subject matter. Not everyone has had negative repercussions from just talking, because that's all we're doing. We're just talking.
I mean, obviously, people have heart attacks. That's a thing.
Of course.
Illness happens, things happen. But there is, a rumor amongst researchers and people involved in cryptid research about the Bigfoot curse and everything. And it was one of the first things I was ever told about. I was told about a particular researcher that vanished. Nobody knows what happened to them. And it was a woman. Nobody knows what happened to her. She just vanished. There have been a number of researchers that have passed away, untimely deaths, seemingly out of nowhere. You know, there's rumors of being approached by, unidentified figures representing unofficial government agencies. There's all kinds of talk.
Yeah. I'm going to continue to do my field research only because I enjoy doing the field research. I enjoy having these experiences, and maybe one day, if I continue to do it, I'll get answers that I'm seeking. But even if I don't get the answers that I'm seeking, I still enjoy having the encounters and having the experiences that I have, only because for me, I've found that when it gets too intense for myself, I have a way to make it calm down. Let's just put it that way. When it comes to dealing with Sasquatch, Dogman, whatever the heck I'm dealing with. But I just don't know. I was talking about it before with you. I don't know if a lot of researchers truly understand what they're messing with when they get into this field, because they think we're just you're just chasing a big hairy ape around the woods. Okay, yeah, you to a certain extent you are just chasing a big hairy ape around the woods, but if you chase that big hairy ape around the woods long enough, you're going to start noticing some weird stuff like we've noticed. And then that gets you down into other subject matter of where did it go? Why did it suddenly just vanish on the edge of that swamp or the edge of that, in the middle of that field? Why have we seen, I don't know about you, but you probably dealt with this. Why can we not get a crisp freaking picture of them? No matter what we do. I don't know about you, but I've tried and tried to get a good image. And it's as if, which that gets in, same thing with, you talk to researchers and they talk about, hey, my batteries got drained. My batteries are being drained. Well, okay. Well, if you study EMF, which gets interrelated back into quantum physics, gets interrelated back into plasma theory, which gets interrelated back into everything we were just talking about. If you study that, it could potentially have the ability to affect batteries, but why could they not also have the ability to either A, affect cameras, or B, you can't get a clear image of them because they have the ability to cloak themselves on demand. And when you're taking that picture, are they cloaking? Are they transitioning from this dimension to another at that moment? I don't know. I don't know the answers to that, but I'm going to continue chasing the answers, even though I'm getting to the point now that either A, I don't know if I really truly want the answers and I just enjoy doing the field work, or B, if I really do get the answers, I don't know if I would even speak openly on them, if you understand where I'm going with that one.
Yeah. I mean, the honest question is, if you went deep enough into this subject and you reached a point where you knew for a fact, this is not just an undiscovered primate, how would you bring that information back to the world? What would be the point? What would be the point? If the answer wasn't the answer that everybody can accept and poke with a stick, what are you going to do with it?
Yep. What are you going to do with it?
And I think a lot of people, maybe not a lot, but some, maybe even yourself, have reached a point where they've come to the conclusion, I can't poke it with a stick. And unfortunately, the Bigfoot world isn't wanting that answer, isn't willing to accept that answer.
No, the broader community definitely does not want to accept that or to hear that answer. But that, makes me wonder. That brings up the question for myself along the lines of, well, why are they not willing, if, for that to be the potential answer, if they're willing to study deeper scientific theories and religion? Or also, another question would be, are we sure that you can't poke it with the stick just because it does have other abilities? But that's the question I'm getting to with, even if it is potentially spiritual or interdimensional, that doesn't mean that it's not physical when it's here. So why couldn't, if you were which there's researchers that I know, and they talk about being touched by a Bigfoot, So if they were touched by the Bigfoot, was it physical at that point when it touched them? Or then you got to get into the whole subject matter of people that talk about they felt like they were being touched by other entities. We can go into when it comes to the other, paranormal subject matter. They say that they felt like there was a hand on their back when there was just a ghost behind them. I don't know. I don't know those answers. I can't tell you how it's possible that a Sasquatch would have the ability to cloak and move between dimensions and be able to touch you, and at the same time not be what we would refer to as physical. But I don't know. That's definitely a question that I'm trying to figure out. Are they physical? Are they physical matter while they're in this world, or do we have to dive deeper down the subject matter? Do we make our own a reality? Or I don't know. I really don't know. It's just the deeper you dig, man, the more complicated the questions become.
Well, here, I'll make it even more complex, because why not? What if there is a Bigfoot? But what if there is also something that can make you think and see a Bigfoot?
Yeah.
I heard a story from a friend of mine out in Washington who was relaying the information from an elder Native American woman who was talking about these things that are out there that are a type of shapeshifter, and that they can look like a Bigfoot. They can look like a dogman. They can look like a person. They can look like anything they want to look like. And they will look like things that the person they're appearing before has the intent on seeing. So if you're out there looking for a Bigfoot, this thing will show up looking like a Bigfoot, but it's not a Bigfoot.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons I went down this rabbit hole, is because the longer I was doing field research, the more I started having experiences that weren't just purely Sasquatch and Dogman. I couldn't just put them in the Sasquatch or Dogman bracket on my on my spreadsheet. I couldn't just say that was Sasquatch or that was Dogman. I started having experiences where the longer I've dug and the deeper I've dug, and I travel quite a bit for my research. It doesn't happen all in the same area, but because I get to travel so much, I've had other experiences that was that a shapeshifter? Was that witchcraft? Was that, I hate the term of UAP or UFO, but was that an alien? Or was that an alien spacecraft? And I didn't start in this field initially to go anywhere near that subject matter. When I spoke to you the first time, I think I told you that I used to call everything that we're talking about the woo. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't want anything to do with it. When I first got into this subject matter, I was just trying to figure out what the heck I saw while hunting one day, and I thought I was just chasing another animal that happened to look nothing like any animal I'd seen before. And as I dug and I dug and I dug, I can't deny that my experiences have not really led me towards finding just another animal out there. It's led me towards questioning, well, what are animals? What are we as humans? What is the world around us? What is our reality? I this subject matter has pushed me into academic studies and into questions that I had never thought about in my life until I got into this subject matter, until I started trying to figure out what that dog man was that I saw hunting initially in 2013. If you had told me in 2013 that I was going to be talking about quantum physics and plasma theory and fractal holographic theory and talking about the Book of Enoch and all these other subjects, and that's where this was going to lead me, A, I would have said, what are you talking about? B, that's crazy. I don't even know what the heck I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know if I would have moved any further on the subject.
And not just talk about those things, but talk about them in the same conversation with one another.
Yep.
You're not the first person to reach that point. And typically you come to a point where you have to decide if you go further or if you pull away.
Yep.
And clearly you've decided to go further.
Yeah, but I'm at the point now that I'm only going further for just the experiences. I don't even know if I'm going further because I really want the answers. Because I don't know if I'm comfortable to get the answers. I don't know how far I'd have to go in the field work to get those answers. So I enjoy having them around when they're out in the field or when they come creeping around the house. But I'm just doing it for the fun of researching at this point. I don't know if I want to dive any further into pursuing answers. It's something I'm going to have to figure out. But on the same hand, I guess I can just follow the research and the field research as it goes, and we'll see what happens. Because I don't want to quit going into the field just because it's potentially something that is beyond many people's spectrum of reality, or it's because it's potentially something that could alter my view of the world. The only thing that stops me is I don't want to get physically harmed by going further in the research. And I'm not just talking about being harmed by Sasquatch or Dogman. But for me, it's made me much more in touch with my spiritual side and religion. It's made me revisit religion, per se. I was definitely drifting away from the church when I was younger. I've definitely drifted towards the churches I've gotten older, especially the further I've gone down this rabbit hole. But I also don't want church to limit my thoughts. Like, just because I call myself a Christian and I have Christian beliefs, I don't want that to limit my my ability to learn or to explore the subject matter deeper.
That's actually an interesting thing, because there's a number of people who I've spoken with that saw all of this stuff that you were talking about, like you were calling it the woo earlier. You know, they don't believe it. They don't believe in that stuff. This is just an undiscovered animal, blah, blah, blah. And then whenever I'm talking to them, I'll ask them, you know, privately, are you a Christian? Well, yes. So you believe in God? Yes. Huh. Okay. So which part of the Bible and the scripture is not paranormal? I mean, I'm just saying, like, my interpretation of it is it's all very much woo. It's all paranormal.
Yep, it is.
So if you can believe that, then, I mean, the hard work's already done, you know. You may not get the answers, you may not understand it, but you should at least be able to entertain the possibility that maybe some things out here are not quite what they're supposed to be.
Yeah. Just talking about Sasquatch or Dogman, how is it that they're so widespread? How is it that I can go to Colorado, for example, or I can go to Wyoming, Montana, or Florida, or Illinois, Texas, New Mexico? Doesn't matter what state I've been to. If I dig around long enough, I run into them. How? How is that possible if we're talking about just a purely an unknown physical animal? How is it they have a population base that's so widespread that I can run into them in so many areas, yet they're just purely another undiscovered animal? I don't know how to answer that.
I mean, globally, not just North America, you know, all over the world.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've not been able to do any research in other countries, but yeah, it's not, which I think the internet has changed the ball game, in that many researchers realize that it's throughout the globe now. Australia talks about it. People in Europe talk about it. Russia talks, it doesn't matter where you go. The subject is widespread throughout the globe. I mean, not on your show, but there was recently a witness that was from Asia that had an encounter in Tennessee, and they realized, wait a second, the myth that I was told as a child about they didn't call it Sasquatch in her nation, but there was an entity that lived in the mountains where she was from, and she realized once she had an encounter in Tennessee that it was probably the same thing that she had been taught about when she was a child back in her country.
Yeah. I interviewed a woman on my show a long time ago that reached out to me. She is not a Bigfooter. She has an interest in the subject because whenever she was on vacation with one of her friends years ago, she saw a Bigfoot as they were driving down the road at night. I think it was after a rainstorm. And that was in Mexico.
Yep.
I mean, what is this thing doing in Mexico?
Yeah. How? I don't know. How? I just don't know. Then it gets into the question that it definitely does seem as if they're concentrated in certain areas of certain, no matter what state you go to. But on the same hand, you can find them on the edges of cities and edges of town, in town in many areas. How is it possible that they're getting inside of cities if they are just purely physical or don't have abilities that we don't understand?
How do they get on military bases in the middle of the desert? I mean, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of rabbit holes to this.
Yeah.
You've got soldiers who are guarding military installations in the middle of nowhere. There's no trees or anything around for miles. And all of a sudden, these Bigfoot show up on the security cameras. And they're sent to, like, see what's going on, run them off. And whenever they go out there, there's nothing there.
Yep. Well, man, I just wanted to speak more freely and pull the Band-Aid off. And I definitely pulled the Band-Aid off. I went way further than just talking about my encounters. You're right. I guess I am going to have to reanalyze how much further I want to go, but at this point, I just enjoy doing the field work.
Well, I'm glad you decided to do this. I'm glad you decided to come on and,
yeah,
speak freely about it and share what you found with everyone and what your thoughts are. And that's what this is about. That's the only way we can grow.
Yeah. I mean, I really do hope it helps someone. I really do hope it makes someone think. And my biggest thing is, talking to anyone that's interested in the subject matter is, you just have to have an open mind. And you really have to stop and look at your ego and look at, how you were taught growing up. And if you're set in your ways and you're not willing to have an open mind, this really is not the subject matter for you. If you just want to go around chasing what you consider to be another potential monkey in the woods and you enjoy doing it, that's great. Go for it. I'm not telling anyone not to do that. But if you really want to dive into the subject matter, I just suggest that you really take a step back and try to decide whether or not you're willing to truly have an open mind when looking at this subject. Just like me, you have to decide how far you really want to dig once you really start getting further into studying the subject. Because I'm way past just chasing around the woods. I know that. But I don't know where it's going to lead.
And if you've had your own encounter with Bigfoot or something else you can't explain and you'd like to share your story on Bigfoot Crossroads, email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check out the website, bigfootcrossroads.com. You can find links to social media, past episodes, merchandise, everything you need, all in one place. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.